Toronto's Life Favorites, 98.1 CHFI, and relax with us online at chfi.com.
From the heart of the city, this is the soundtrack to A Ring of Immense Power. Good evening, I'm Don Jackson. C.S. Lewis called the trio of books an instant classic. Edmund Wilson dismissed the trilogy as juvenile trash. J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy has sold more than 50 million copies and was also made into a trio of immensely popular films. The live stage adaptation opened here in Toronto to mixed reviews, but the films were by far the more popular with audiences. It was a strange holiday season once again not to have a new installment in the Lord of the Rings saga on the big screen. Tonight, a tribute to its author with Lovers and Other Strangers. From 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Enrique Iglesias with Hero and the Beatles on the Long and Winding Road. Do you remember Ernest Hemingway's tale of the Old Man and the Sea? Santiago, an old Cuban fisherman, finally catches a magnificent fish after weeks of having no bites at all. He lashes the fish to the side of his boat for the trip back, but the fish is attacked by sharks and eaten before he makes it ashore. In The Tale of the Pearl by John Steinbeck, a Mexican Indian pearl diver finds a very valuable pearl, but instead of changing his life and the life of his family for the better, the greed of others makes him wish he never found it in the first place. He eventually throws the pearl back into the ocean. In J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, Smeagol's friend finds the one great ring, the one to rule all the others. And the creature, who is later to be known as Gollum, kills his friend for it, claiming it is his birthday and he wants it. Having is oftentimes much different than wanting. Ask those who have won a lottery or come into a large windfall of money. You sometimes end up with more problems than you ever thought the money could solve. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Neil Young searching the world over for a heart of gold, and Barenaked Ladies, and If I Had $1 Million. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow it if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger why, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then, I cannot say. I've always been a big fan of the J.R.R. Tolkien masterpiece, The Lord of the Rings. No one was more pleased to learn of a series of films being made than I was. I always thought that the tale could translate well onto the big screen. It just needed the right director who shared Tolkien's vision of Middle-earth and the right computer technology for the special effects. But the story, at its heart, is a simple one. It's a tale of a ragtag group of travelers who took a journey to return a ring to the fire from which it was forged. They end up finding something even more important along the way: fellowship and friendship. Lessons we all have to learn ourselves on the road of life. The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. Now, far ahead, the road has gone. Let others follow it, who can. Let them a journey now begin. But I at last, with weary feet, will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest, and sleep to meet. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, that's Enya and Only Time. My companion writing tonight is called The Ring Cycle. Log on right now to the CHFI website. Follow the links on the homepage to my daily weblog. You'll find out early tonight why this program is devoted to Tolkien. You'll also learn about a much-loved pet, long gone now. Lovers and Other Strangers returns. I'm Don Jackson.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's life favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at CHFI.com.
And welcome back to Lovers and Other Strangers, now a blog as well at CHFI.com. I'm Don Jackson. Here is the mirror of Galadriel, she said. I have brought you here so that you may look in it, if you will. Unquote. The three books in the trilogy were The Fellowship of the Ring, published in 1954, The Two Towers, published in 1955, and The Return of the King in 1956. As I said in Merriam-Webster's Encyclopedia of Literature, the novels set in the Third Age of Middle-earth formed a sequel to Tolkien's The Hobbit. The trilogy is the saga of a group of sometimes reluctant heroes who set forth to save their world from consummate evil. At 33, the age of adulthood among hobbits, it was a land of elves and hobbits, of orcs and trolls, and a vile creature called Gollum, who had been seduced by a ring of great power. There were runes to be deciphered, songs to be sung, beautiful poems to listen to by the light of the moon, and elven queens to be seen in starlight. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Cat Stevens with Moonshadow and RyanDan with The Face. Carl Wilson Baker wrote, Today I have grown taller from walking with the trees. The seven sister poplars who go softly in a line. And I think my heart is whiter from its parley with the star that trembled out at nightfall and hung above the pine. The call note of a redbird from the cedars in the dusk woke his happy note within me to an answer free and fine. And a sudden angel beckoned from a column of blue smoke. Who am I that they should stoop, these holy folk of thine? A poem called Good Company by Carl Wilson Baker. Two of the hobbits meet up with a creature called Treebeard, one of the oldest living ents of the old forest, a tree herd, for lack of a better description. The tree herd said, We keep off strangers and the foolhardy, and we train and we teach, we walk and we weed. Sheep get like shepherd, and shepherds like sheep, it is said, but slowly, and neither have long in the world. It is quicker and closer with trees and ants, and they walk down the ages together. Most of the trees are just trees, of course, but many are half awake. Some are quite wide awake. You find that some have bad hearts, nothing to do with their wood. Some of my kin look just like trees now, and we need something great to rouse them, and they speak, only in whispers. Elves began it, of course, waking trees and teaching them to speak and learning their tree talk. They always wished to talk to everything the old elves did. Time was when I could walk and sing all day and hear no more than the echo of my own voice in the hollow hills and the smell of the air. I used to spend a week just breathing. There was much to be learned from this ant called Treebeard, and who knows, something of Tolkien's ants could have evolved from fact rather than fiction. The Druids were tree worshippers. They believed that spirits inhabited the trees. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Loreena McKennitt with The Mummers Dance. In one of J.R.R. Tolkien's earlier tales, a book that was incomplete at the time of his death, Tolkien mused that the beginning of all creation, including Middle-earth, began with a single note of music. In Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, what was the way the humans discovered to communicate with the aliens? A series of musical tones, of course. Both are fanciful tales, but there may be more than truth, more truth than fiction, to the underlying premise of both. Giuseppe Mazzini wrote, "Music is the harmonious voice of creation, an echo of the invisible world, one note of the divine concord, which the entire universe is destined one day to sound." Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI.
Your life set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's life favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at chfi.com.
We're in the heart of Toronto, around the world on the internet, and now a blog as well at chfi.com. My companion writing tonight is called The Ring Cycle. Log on right now to the CHFI website. Follow the links on the homepage to my blog at chfi.com. Good evening once again. I'm Don Jackson. As it said in one publication, and I quote, "It all started with the love of a language." J.R.R. Tolkien was, as the New York Times once described him, the tweediest and most persnickety of Oxford philosophists, a translator and annotator of Old English, Old Norse, and Welsh poetry. Having created an imaginary language, he discovered a desire to create characters to speak it. From this unlikely beginning grew what would become one of the most enduring fiction epics of the 20th century, variously interpreted as a Christian tract, an allegory of World War II, and a dozen other oddities. It was compulsory reading during the 60s, blossomed into a subculture of its own during the 70s and beyond, and continues even now to fire the public's imagination. unquote. An excerpt from the November 01 issue of the Quality Paperback Book Club Review. We're speaking of the author's work and his life tonight with Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Paul Anka with Anthea, Anka and Do I Love You, and Celine Dion, and My Heart Will Go On. Tonight, some thoughts on the trilogy created by J.R.R. Tolkien, and some memorable scenes as well. In Middle-earth mythology, J.R.R. Tolkien led us to believe that the elves were master archers. And one elf, in particular, took it upon himself to help defend the Fellowship of the Ring. His name was Legolas. His aim was sure and true when he was called upon to defend Frodo and the Ring of Power from the orc armies of Sauron and Saruman. His arrows were only used to destroy. They were weapons in the hands of a master archer. Maybe Tolkien had been wounded by Cupid's arrows at one point in time in his life. Maybe that's why he made sure that the arrows fired by this elf never missed their mark. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Rod Stewart with Broken Arrow and the Rankin family, and Fare Thee Well. In the Houses of the Healing, in The Return of the King, Aragorn, Strider as most remember him, has returned. Kings in this mythology have the power of healing in their hands. They know the lore associated with medicinal herbs. And I quote, "Then taking 2 leaves, he laid them on his hands and breathed on them. And then he crushed them, and straightway a living freshness filled the room, as if the air itself awoke and tingled, sparkling with joy. And then he cast the leaves into the bowls of steaming water that were brought to him, and at once all hearts were lightened. For the fragrance that came to each was like a memory of dewy mornings, of unshadowed sun in some land, of which the fair world in spring is itself but a fleeting memory." One of the combatants can be easily healed, but another is not so lucky. She has received a grievous blow. He says, "When I first looked on her and perceived her unhappiness, it seemed to me that I saw a white flower standing straight and proud, shapely as a lily, yet knew that it was hard, as if wrought by elf rites out of steel. Or was it maybe a frost that had turned its sap to ice? And so it stood bittersweet, still fair to see, but stricken, soon to fall and die." Unquote. I don't think he really knew this daughter of royalty very well. As Dante wrote, "For I have seen, stiff and sharp, the thorn bush stand all winter long, then finally bear a rose upon its top." Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Bette Midler with The Rose. My companion writing is called The Ring Cycle, and speaking of healing herbs, In it, in my weblog today, are some thoughts on what the great wizards of the past may have really been. Log on right now to the CHFI website. Follow the links on the homepage to my daily weblog. Lovers and Other Strangers returns. I'm Don Jackson.
Passion set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at CHFI.com.
Welcome back to Lovers and Other Strangers, now a blog as well at CHFI.com. I'm Don Jackson. In The Return of the King, Aragorn has worked a little of his healing magic on the Lady of Rohan. As the sweet influence of the herb stole about the chamber, it seemed to those who stood by that a keen wind blew through the window, and it bore no scent, but was an air wholly fresh and clean and young, as if it not before been breathed by any living thing, and came new made from snowy mountains high beneath a dome of stars, or from shores of silver far away, washed by seas of foam. Bruce Dern starred in the science fiction film Silent Running. The few remaining forests on Earth were put on specially designed spaceships and blasted into outer space to roam the solar system until the planet gets its ecological act together, which of course it never does. In fact, all the spaceships received the order to blow up the pods containing the forests and then return to Earth. Future gone mad? Most definitely. But not so far from the truth when one considers attempts that have been made to eradicate the rainforests in some places. There is a school of thought that believes that we will find a cure for just about every disease buried deep within these tropical rainforests. And with the destruction of these very important wild places, we will never know what might be waiting to be discovered. J.R.R. Tolkien's Ents might be there, tree-herding some of the sleeping giants. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, the Beatles with Blackbird and John Denver with Annie's Song. For all of its computer-generated effects, there was still room in the film version for the love story in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Viggo Mortensen and Liv Tyler suggested a romance between the magical world of the elves and the mortal world of man. And in the end, both knew it couldn't last, that fate was against their love, because the time of the elves on Middle-earth was coming to an end. She was an immortal, and he was, yes, a king, but a mortal man. Nevertheless, there would come a time when she would grieve for her dead husband as she continued to live far beyond his allotted time. But in the story, even the faithful servant, Sam, eventually weds his favorite girl in the Shire at the end of the film. Technology is a wonderful thing. It allows us to create a motion picture experience like The Lord of the Rings trilogy, Armageddon, The Matrix, Troy, and so many other science fiction and fantasy blockbusters. But in the past, movie makers had to rely on what was available. The heart of this old story is, of course, a very simple love affair. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Justin Hines, and I Wish You Well. He wrote another classic work called The Hobbit, and I hear they might be thinking of making that tale into a major motion picture. So eventually, during some future holiday season, we may have another Tolkien film on the big screen. Back in the spring of this past year, an unfinished tale by J.R.R. Tolkien was finally edited by his son into a completed work. Christopher Tolkien had spent the past 30 years working on The Children of Húrin, an epic tale his father began in 1918 and later abandoned. Excerpts of The Children of Húrin, which includes the elves and dwarves of Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings and other works, have of course been published before. It has seemed to me for a long time that there was a good case for presenting my father's long version of the legend of The Children of Húrin as an independent work between its own covers. Christopher Tolkien said in a statement carried by the Associated Press back in 2006. 30 years seems like a lifetime to be spent on editing a work for publication, but in the case of a work by Tolkien, you wouldn't want to publish anything that couldn't stand up against the standards set by the fathers, The Hobbit, and The Lord of the Rings. Well, here at last, dear friends, on the shores of the sea, comes the end of our fellowship in Middle-earth. Go in peace. I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are an evil. An excerpt, the writing of J.R.R. Tolkien, born January 3rd, 1892. He died September 2nd, 1973. One last excerpt tonight. Tolkien reminded us, all that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be the blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. My companion writing tonight is called The Ring Cycle. Log on right now to the CHFI website. Follow the links on the homepage to my daily weblog at CHFI.com. That concludes another chapter of Lovers and Other Strangers. Lovers and Other Strangers returns long after the sun sets. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.